BC has had their share of bad losses this year, but Saturday's loss to Florida State could have been the worst. We're going to discuss everything that happened on Saturday, all on today's Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. Today's show is brought to you by Sonos. Sonos is the official sponsor of ESPN College Football. Go to Sonos.com to learn more. 26-23. Boston College loses to Florida State in Chestnut Hill on Saturday. And let's just dive right in. On today's show, we're going to go over the game. We're going to go over the nuances of it with Mitch Wolfe in our second and third segment. This is something you're not going to want to miss. So, Boston College, they come out looking incredibly flat on Saturday. The Florida State offense, Jordan Travis, they look like barn burners. They look like they're playing in another game compared to what Boston College's defense can do. And then the surprising part of all of this was Boston College's offense that couldn't make anything happen. Now, we knew going into this game, Florida State had a really good defensive line. They had Georgia defensive transfer, Jermaine Johnson, who's probably the best defensive end in the entire ACC with 10.5 sacks heading into this game. But they also had Keir Thompson, another defensive end, and a defensive tackle, Malcolm Ray, who was also very, very good. And you know, what we expected in this game, if you were thinking on the optimistic side, is that Boston College's offensive line would step up and at least mitigate some of the pass rush that was going to be coming their way. They didn't. The first half of that game was a nightmare on offense, and there was a bunch of different things that we can get into later. But first of all, Frank Cignetti decided that they were going to go with the power running game instead of trying to throw the ball, which, I mean, I guess. I mean, he started doing more of that once Jurkovec was getting hit constantly. So I get pieces of it. It just wasn't working, and they needed to figure something else out, and they didn't. They just kept running it for very, very little success. The other piece, as I said, with the offensive line, Jurkovec was getting killed during this game. If you were a fan of Jurkovec and you liked watching him play, watching this game was hard to watch because he looked like he was going to get hurt often during that first half. He's getting hit left and right. He just can't get the ball out, and it was impossible for him to do anything deep because Florida State was in his face the entire game. And Jurkovec, he wasn't completely innocent in the issues too. Now, as much as we have been very, very pro Jurkovec on this Locked On Boston College podcast, this was certainly not one of his better games. And partially, you know, as I said, he was running for his life for parts of it, but also he held on to that ball way too long on some of those pass plays. And that's on him. Like, he's going to get rid of the ball faster than that. And you know, if there's, you know, he was missing receivers at different times. Again, we've heard about this before. It just wasn't his best game. So this first half, we see this conglomeration of offensive issues, play calling, offensive line, quarterback issues. Then the defense, they're not getting stops. They go into halftime down 19-3. Travis had a pair of touchdowns, and the big play of the game, a safety. They got Phil Jurkovec to throw a screen pass to Travis Levy, who got absolutely blown up right at the goal line. It was ruled a safety, and that was a difference maker in the end because in the second half, Boston College came to life. So I saw a lot of people comparing this game to Steve Addazio, right? They came out flat. That's Steve Addazio. Now, a Steve Addazio game, Boston College would have lost 40-10 because once the wheels started going off on Addazio game, it just completely fell off. Credit to the staff. They obviously did not call a perfect game because that first half was atrocious, but they made the adjustments in the second half to get the offense going, to get the defense going. The defense let up a touchdown to start the second half on a nice pass by Travis over CJ Burton Jr., And after that, they got 3 punts. That was all they did in the second half. So you can't complain about the defense in the second half. They played exceptionally well. The offense came alive too. Jurkovec, he threw 2 touchdown passes to Zay Flowers, and he ran for one himself. He had 1 touchdown pass to Zay Flowers, ran for one himself, and one by Patrick Garwo. The game comes down. BC's defense makes another stop. It was really impressive to see the defense kind of solidify to slow down Jordan Travis, which they did a great job of at the end. They get the ball back at good field position. They start moving the ball down the field, and then mistakes happen. And then it's 4th and 9, and that's when Florida State's defense tees off on Jurkovec. He can't get a straight pass out, gets intercepted. The ball game is over. Boston College falls to 6-5. This seemed like a winnable game, and it's frustrating because you saw the mistakes. You saw how they started. They can't start games like that because you're playing against better teams. Florida State's a decent team. I mean, as much as we want to rip on them for having a lower record, they've played pretty good of late. So BC needs to do better. And they got to do better for this next weekend because they're playing against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, who were a top 10 team for a long time. Now, Boston College is only a 5-point underdog heading into this game. But man, if that defense doesn't show up or if that offense takes forever to get going, they're going to be in a world of trouble. And that could be the signal of something needing to change in this team. It could just be systems like scheme stuff. We'll talk with Mitch about that later on. But something needs to get shaken up a little bit here because BC's, in a game like this, you got to figure out how to get through this. And with Jurkovec back there, he's got to be able to make those reads and make those throws. So a disappointing loss for the Eagles, but hopefully they learn from it, and hopefully we will see the Eagles do better when they face off against Wake Forest. Now, all right, college football fanatics, have you heard about PrizePicks? PrizePicks is a daily fantasy made easy. I love this, and I know you will too. PrizePicks is a leader in college sports daily fantasy. They offer more college football props than anyone in the world and offers all the star players of the Power 5, as well as mid-major players you may not have even heard of. You could pick Zay Flowers' receiving yards, and then you could go with Sam Hartman's passing yards, and you do the over-under on both. You could win up to 10 times depending on how you set up your bets. Now, when you set up your account with PrizePicks, make sure to use promo code LOCKEDON when you make your initial deposit because they're going to match 100% on your first deposit up to $100. PrizePicks allows mixed sports entry. So again, I said, you could take LeBron James and you could take Ben Roethlisberger if you wanted to. Using the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play, it's so much fun. I've played a couple times this weekend. I had bad luck this weekend, but I've had a lot of luck on PrizePicks in past weeks. So got my fingers crossed that I'll start to turn it around because PrizePicks is the daily fantasy app you need to check out. It's fun to play, it's easy to win, it's safe, and offers fast withdrawals. Don't hesitate, check out PrizePicks.com and use promo code LOCKEDON or go to your App Store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. This is Locked On Boston College, AJ Black. I am joined by Mitch Wolfe. We're going to start dissecting Saturday's 26-23 loss to the Florida State Seminoles. And Mitch is always here on Sunday to help us process losses or celebrate victories. Mitch, how's it going?
It's good. Dissecting is a good word because we'll pretty much be going over a corpse in some people's minds. So, but I'm excited to be back as always.
Yeah. I mean, it was a disappointing loss, but and there was definitely some concerns going in there, especially in the offensive side of the ball to start the game. I think a lot has been said online, and I get it that they started off really slow. Hafley even admitted it himself. He said that they didn't seem like themselves when they came out of the gate, and it was kind of on him to figure that out. But I think some of that also goes on to the play calling. Mitch and I talk a lot about this during the game when we're chatting back and forth. It just seemed like really, really run heavy, which Hafley had acknowledged on Sunday was part of what they thought they could do. That seemed like a fallacy to me, Mitch. Don't you think that was probably not the right move to make?
It's hard to say because I think you put together a game plan and part of the assumption is that you're like, okay, well, I think our guys can out execute theirs. And that obviously didn't happen. And the thing about coaching is like, you kind of can't really make that change until halftime because that's when you have enough time to you're like, okay, this isn't working. Like we need to do different stuff. Like we can't just stick with what we're doing. You can't just be like, okay, now we're just going to throw the ball all of a sudden. Like, cause you have your scripted plays, you have your game plan kind of set out. So you don't have the time to make that big of an adjustment. But I thought that running the ball in general, the biggest issue was obviously that Florida State's defensive line was owning the line of scrimmage throughout the game against the run and the pass. I mean, they weren't allowing the running backs to get in the second level with ease. They were pressuring Phil Jurkovec pretty much the whole day, or Jurkovec the whole day. I'll say this: I thought they played a lot better in the second half in terms of pass protecting. It seemed like Phil had a lot more time back there in the second half. So, but overall, that really kind of doomed BC's offense from the start.
Yeah, and speaking of the offensive line, we're talking about it online with a lot of different folks, and it has to be a disappointing season, and it's fair to be incredibly disappointed with the way that they've played. They've been inconsistent. They've had games where they look great. They look great against Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech doesn't have a defensive front like Florida State does. They play a team like Florida State with Jermaine Johnson and that defensive front, and they struggled. Specifically the tackles I thought looked pretty weak. Mitch, talk a little bit about what you saw from the offensive line.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I thought that, so Christian Mahogany was out, and that I think hurt the Eagles in the run game. But, they had guys come in that were decent. But, Tyler Vrabel and Ben Petrula really struggled at tackle, facing Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas, who had a statistically better game than Johnson. But I thought that Johnson made a significantly bigger impact. But, the interior guys pass blocked decently well. But in the running backs, like once they finally started involving the running backs and the tight ends and the pass protection in the second half, then things started to click, which I was like, okay, finally we're doing this. This is the smart thing to do. But, both guys really got victimized in a variety of ways. They got beat by athleticism around the edge. They got beat by specific pass rush moves, and they got beat just by getting overpowered by either the defensive end. So just overall, a really tough performance. I was talking with you about this earlier, that a lot of people are saying like the O-line was overrated in the preseason. I'm not sure that that's specifically true, and I'm going to argue with it from more of a semantic point, is that I wouldn't say they're overrated. Like I would say they were, like you said, disappointing in that we expected guys, specifically like Vrabel, to take a step forward, and he has been hurt, so that's been part of it. But, he hasn't really progressed this year. You kind of expect Petrula to be a stalwart on the right side, but he really hasn't. I don't think he's improved that much since, 2019. He's kind of just been the same player, which against decent teams and bad teams, that's fine. But when you're playing, guys who are really good and might be playing on Sundays, most likely in the future, he kind of gets exposed.
Yeah. And I think it was Petrula, and I hate pointing out kids for certain plays that got beat bad. There was one play, and I want to say it was the second half, where he just got blasted on a play. And it
was the toss sweep when a linebacker tossed him right into sink field and caused a tackle for loss.
Yes.
Because Petrula basically tackled him.
Yes. He just got beat physically. And, that was just kind of that was the symbolic play of the game. I feel like, that's exactly what happened. Now I didn't talk about this in the first segment, and this isn't more a question to Mitch here, but I don't know where Trey Barry was. We haven't heard.
I think he had one target, and I'll say this: Florida State has a very athletic back end, so that might have been part of the problem. I'm going to try to find where his snap splits were, but yeah, they really just weren't trying to throw the ball to him. I think they were trying to work the ball deeper down the field a lot in the first half, which really I didn't love that strategy. I don't really know what was going on there. He had one target. Not that many snaps, it seems. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I'll have to rewatch it again, but yeah, that was very odd. They didn't go to the tight ends more. I think they only targeted Luchetti like twice, and one of them, Barry only played 14 snaps, so he might have been hurt at some point. He might have re-aggravated that knee injury, so that might be why.
Okay. Now, we're going to talk, Mitch and I, on Tuesday show, a lot about the coaching staff and get, talking about where this coaching staff sits. And one of the biggest questionable plays of the game that people are all pointing to, it ended up being the difference maker, was the safety. Now it was a screen pass to Travis Levy. He didn't get out of the end zone. Now you're a scouting person. You're into the X's and O's, Mitch. Do you agree with that play call, or was that just doomed from the start?
So I think that calling screens against this type of team is a good call, because you're going to confuse the pass rush, and ideally a screen like that slows them down, because they'll be like, oh, like this might be a screen, I'm going to rush slower. And that, they were getting killed. So like dropping back to throw a deep pass might have gotten Phil Jurkovec just sacked in the end zone. So that could have been the issue. They were pretty backed up. So running could have had the same thing. I think they thought, okay, we'll maybe catch them with the screen. And really the screen was there in terms of like drawing the defensive line in and then getting the ball past them. It's just a matter of that a linebacker just flew in and blew it up. So, I'm not too upset with that. I think the other one that people were most upset about was when they went for it on fourth down in the red zone and basically just kept running Pat Garrow up the middle in shotgun, which, especially at that point when the run game really wasn't going anywhere. And that was something that it happened a little bit in the second half too. I'm I'm fine with their commitment to the run game, but I do think that they need to start throwing a little bit more, especially on 3rd and short, just to maybe give the defense a different look, because it seems like no matter who's at quarterback, the defense is assuming BC is going to run the ball at the middle on 3rd and 3 or whatever. So they need to start giving them some different looks there.
And part of that reason could be because Jurkovec did not look 100%.
Yeah.
And it didn't help that he got the snot beat out of him for the first half of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But even before that, like the ball was not coming out of his hand cleanly. He was, throwing balls into the ground. What was your thoughts on Jurkovec's play?
Yeah, he's honestly had a bit of that problem, even going back to last year, where he'll just kind of short arm throws out of nowhere. That happened a lot more this week. And I'm wondering if that had to do with maybe he just kind of had a little bit of a setback with his hand, from the game last week or whenever. Maybe the cold weather kind of made the injury, made it worse. Tim Hasselbeck was making a big point about how the cold weather, affects your grip strength, especially when your hand is injured. So, if you don't have as strong of a grip on that ball, you can't throw it as hard or throw it as far. So I think that was part of it. But I think also, so like we talked about the offensive line struggle, but there were also times where Jurkovec just held onto the ball far too long and he needed to get rid of it. Like there was a play down in the red zone where I think it was the play that was originally a fumble, but then they called an incompletion where he had Zay on a little whip route going to the outside and he just stared him down and didn't throw it for some reason. So, a lot of the issues were on the offensive line, but Phil also needs to, play faster, get the ball out more quickly, especially when, the offensive line isn't playing its best.
And I think that right there, what you just said there, all the teeth gnashing about whether he's going to go pro next year or not. I think this game really solidified that he's not a complete passer yet. Like there's still a ton of he has his elite moments, but he's still not consistent enough. And I think some of the things that you said, if he went to say he didn't declare, but got enough scouts to talk to him, the lower draft grades might start to pop up where you might go, yeah, maybe I need to come back for another year.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that, based on the totality of his performances, I think if a team kind of gave him a grade, they'd probably say he was maybe an early day 3, a late day 2 pick. So that's the end of the 3rd round, because he does have that physical skill set. But there are these inconsistencies. There's the injury concerns. So I think that he's listen, I can come back, put together a really good season with most of the team back and improving, and I can, really raise my stock up. So I don't think BC fans have to worry about him leaving for the draft early at all.
And he's going to be buying dinners for Zay Flowers for the next month and a half. So anyways, well, in a moment, Mitch and I are going to talk about the defense. Now, speaking of good things, let's talk about Built Bar. If you haven't tried a Built Bar by now, you are missing out. They say it's a protein bar. It does not taste like one. You know why? It's 100% covered in chocolate. It tastes delicious. Now, most protein bars are chalky. They're waxy. They're hard to eat. Sometimes you need a glass of water to choke some of these things down. Not a Built Bar. A Built Bar is an experience. I have one every day around 2:30. It's my midday snack. I love them. I have one with a nice can of seltzer, and it gets me through the end of my day. It gives me the energy I need to focus and get my work done. Built Bars are low carb, low calorie, low sugar, and high in protein. And the health benefits, it's delicious. Now, listen to the flavors they have right now. They have coconut, raspberry, mint brownie, coconut almond, salted caramel, double chocolate, and cherry barcia. And the best part, they have some specialty flavors that you just need to go to BuiltBar.com and check out, because they change them so often. There's some really good ones that you can find on their website. So head on over to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. This is AJ Black, Locked On Boston College. I'm also the editor and publisher of BC Bulletin. I'm here with staff writer Mitch Wolfe, who joins us on Mondays to talk about the previous game. Mitch will also be joining us on Tuesday this week. We're gonna throw in a change up here on Tuesday. We're gonna not do our usual laugh at Steve Adazio, talk about UMass, talk about the games around the country. We're gonna talk about the BC coaching staff and where they stand as they exit year 2. So you're going to want to hear our thoughts on that. So check out tomorrow's episode. Mitch, we're going to start talking about this defense, who came out looking flat and looked like every BC defense we've seen for the last couple of years, a little slow, couldn't really manage what Jordan Travis did. But come the second half, they put together quite the effort. Talk a little bit about how you saw the performance progress through the game and what maybe some adjustments you saw.
Yeah, I thought their turnaround was extremely impressive because this is something that I said, that I think that if this was a Steve Addazio coach team, it would have been about 40-10 at the final instead of 26-23. Like, that team would have just absolutely quit. But I think that they, got them. I think the biggest issue was early on, Florida State had a really good script of plays. Initially, they were doing a lot of motion, both before and at the snap, to get BC defenders moving around, get their eyes where they weren't supposed to be, and kind of get them out of position that allowed them to get some big plays on those initial drives. And then at the end of the day, there were times where, Florida State was just more athletic than BC at key points. Jordan Travis made a lot of plays with his legs as a runner, and even just to get outside the pocket. Their running back room is good just in general. Their receivers made some plays. BC's they got Brandon Sebastian back, but they were down Josh DeBerry, who's probably their best player on the back end. But yeah, like you said, second half, they really turned it on, aside from the first touchdown they gave up out of the half, which, after that, they didn't allow any points. So, 24 points as a defense, that's not the best, but, you should be able to find a way to win with that. And ultimately they couldn't, but I think, again, this was kind of the issue where there wasn't really a lot of pass rush. Marcus Valdez had a very solid game, but, they had the issue where they would get some pressure, but then they couldn't really finish at Travis and get him to the ground. So they, got a lot of pressure, but he was able to evade it and get outside the pocket. And like I said, create plays.
Yeah. And I think that's the big issue, that, it's that one piece that BC has been missing, is that like extra step to get to the quarterback. They seem like for the last 3 years, they've got guys like Valdez or Shita Salah, that just can't get to the quarterback in time. And it's just, it's frustrating to watch. Now, I know you have some thoughts. We have not really talked about Cam Arnold's play. I want to talk a little bit about Cam Arnold. Cam, he was a freshman last year, played safety. He was thrown in after Mike Palmer's injury at the end of the year, did a nice job to end the season. Then Hafley moves him over to linebacker, and as he kind of re-envisions that 4-2-5 defense. But, he's had his moments. He's been kind of inconsistent. Talk about what you've seen out of him in his first year as a linebacker.
So on NFL Twitter, there's this thing where somebody will post a meme, and it's usually of Kyle Shanahan, like looking down a microscope, or looking down the barrel of looking down the scope of a sniper rifle. And it's pointed at like the quote bad defender on a defense, so it'll be Kyle Shanahan looking at some like Daniel Sorensen for the Chiefs, who's, been really struggling this year. And basically, I think that is kind of where Cam Arnold is fitting. Like, a lot of defenses are picking on him. They're forcing him to be the conflict defender. So basically, when they run a play and, basically they are running some kind of read or something where Cam Arnold has to make a decision, or he has to go a certain way. And basically, wherever he goes, the offense is going to go the opposite way. So some of it is him making mistakes. Like, he had some issues fitting the run earlier in the season, like against Syracuse and Louisville. But then in the passing, it's more like, okay, like there's not a lot he can do. Like, it's just the offense is just going to go the opposite way of him. So it looks bad sometimes, but other times it's just like, all right, there's, he's just trying his best, for lack of a better word.
Do you think he has a higher ceiling than what we've seen?
I think so, because like you said, there are some really nice moments where he like comes downhill and gets some big hits on the outside. Like, he obviously has the athleticism and the speed to cover most of the field. I think, he's, he didn't play much last year as a freshman. He was playing safety. This is his first year really playing linebacker. He's kind of adjusting to, a new weight and such. So, I think next year he could take a step forward and kind of improve his play. But right now it's a little bit of a struggle, but, I wouldn't read too much into it.
And now with the linebackers, we saw Isaiah Graham Mobley return. That was obviously a big deal to get a speedier linebacker back. But the big injury news heading into this game, and Hafley talked about it, he didn't make the excuses the way that Addazio sometimes used to, but just said they're banged up. And it's true. Josh DeBerry was out. How big of a loss was DeBerry in the way the defense played?
I think early on it was more of a struggle. But even so, I don't think it was as catastrophic as I thought. I think there were times where they didn't get to guys near the sidelines because of a lack of speed. And I think that's where you missed DeBerry. But, they moved Elijah Jones in there, and he's a pretty different player from DeBerry. Honestly, he's really tall and long and everything. So, but I thought he played decently well. I wouldn't say it was a bad performance by him from any means. I think the issue though, like you kind of start digging into your depth, and again, like their players are decent, but it's like, there's just not a lot of experience. So you have a guy like CJ Burton, who is a 4-star, but he's a true freshman. He hasn't played a ton. So he got victimized on the Florida State's the touchdown in the third quarter, where he just got beat out by a guy who's much bigger and stronger than him. So, that stuff's going to happen, but I thought they did a decent job covering for DeBerry's absence. It wasn't at least in the second half, wasn't as catastrophic as I would have expected. But hopefully he's, back and ready for the game this week and the bowl game.
Yeah, it sounds like Halfley on a Sunday press conference said that he didn't say the whole full thing that he always says, which is the most vague injury report you could possibly get. But he says he expects to have DeBerry back and Salah back this week. And he talked about Salah being important too. I mean, he's been the starting defensive end. I just haven't seen him do that much. But
yeah, he hasn't really made a ton of plays since they've been playing like ACC opponents. Was there any word on Mahogany?
He didn't mention him during the press conference. Okay. Yep. Now, Mitch, we're going to let you go in just a moment. I want to get your thoughts on one last thing. It has nothing to do with the defense and the offense. What are your thoughts on FSU cutting up Alumni Stadium?
I mean, I sent this to you this morning, and I think, Florida State is back. They're the villain of this conference. They do stuff like this. People were complaining about BC being the undisciplined team, and which was ridiculous to me because Florida State had multiple drive killing and drive extending penalties for BC. They had 13 penalties for 120 yards, including one targeting that got a player ejected. There could have been another targeting that got a player ejected when they hit Phil high on a slide. And, they had to take a lot of timeouts because of delay games and stuff, just some pre-snaps. I mean, they're just a very undisciplined team. And, the players in that video were cutting up the field with scissors while BC's team ops was just standing by watching, which I thought was ridiculous. And the players saying like, oh, like they called us trash. And it's like, okay, like that doesn't give you the excuse to destroy another team's property. So I'm hoping that, like you said, FSU will be, or the ACC will be sending FSU an invoice for repairs to Alumni Stadium's field, because I thought that was, in a word, trashy behavior.
Well, not even just that. I mean, like, whatever. If like, I know Clemson does the cemetery for like their big opponents. This is freaking a 6-5 BC team. What are you doing cutting? Like, it's not like,
they're like, what, like, are you going to frame that and be like, oh, look at this time. We beat, but like almost lost to BC because we gave it 20 unanswered in the second half. And here's a piece of turf that I cut up. Yeah. Sick, dude. Nice.
Yeah. And for the folks that are at home going, well, if BC doesn't like it, beat them. That's not the point. The point is FSU wants to be this world beater. They think they should be the top of the ACC. Act like it. Like, you beat Miami, go ahead, cut up their turf if you're playing at Miami. I know they didn't. But if you're playing Boston College and Boston College isn't ranked, and Boston College has been struggling all year, what are you doing? Like, you're just, it's not.
Like, frankly, don't cut up anybody's turf, I would say. But, but doing it against BC is just like, I mean, sick flex, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, so Mitch, we'll be joined again by you tomorrow to talk about this coaching staff. Where can people find you?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE on Twitter. I'll be posting my updated bowl game projections for BC, kind of one just like breaking down which bowl games they could go to, and then another one that's kind of just my full breakdown of every bowl game, which teams I expect to go where, and that'll be coming out this week. And I'm hoping that the YouTube copy of the game gets posted a little quicker so I can actually do a film review, because this game will be interesting to see what happened with Phil. But we'll see if that copy gets uploaded quick enough to a time where I can actually analyze it.
All right. Thanks, Mitch, for joining us. You can follow us on Twitter at LockedOnBC. You can find me on Twitter at AJBlack_BC. I'm the editor and publisher of BCBulletin.com. Make sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube. You know where to find us. Thank you all for listening. If this is the first time you've listened to us, thank you. I hope you enjoyed our show. Make sure to make this part of your daily routine. We talk about Boston College 5 days a week. We'll be back again tomorrow to talk about coaching, football, basketball, and all the other good stuff. Thank you all. Have a good one.